poisonous berry, could be you could heal someone with it if you know what to do with it, but it
Totally.
definitely can poison you. Will sees her for the first time. It's just this like ball of red, that he just cannot turn away from.
How many times have we looked at a bush and seen like that ominous red berry and like it looks good, you know? But
Delicious.
yeah. Hey, costume nerds, welcome back to the Costume House with Spencer Williams. I am your host, Spencer Williams, and thank you so much for joining me for another special episode. I'm so excited because today we get to interview a costume designer, someone whom I've been wanting to meet for such a long time. Costume designer Malgosia Turzanska, the costume designer for the new film directed by Chloé Zhao, Hamnet. I am absolutely in love with this film. It was beautiful, tragic. I'm obsessed with the incredible textiles, the organic feel to the costumes. The use of color in this film is just so striking. And of course, just such a beautiful story, script, incredible performances by Jesse Buckley and Paul Mescal, and such a great cast of young child actors as well too. This is a good one, and I hope you all run to the theaters and see it. It's just so good, and honestly, give Malgosia and her team the Oscar nomination because they absolutely killed it and they deserve it. And with that, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will be joined by Malgosia Turzanska. I am so excited for today's interview. I've been wanting to talk to today's guest for as long as this podcast has even existed. We did an episode about the Green Knight in our very first season, episode 7 of the Art of Costume podcast. And ever since then, I've been wanting to talk to costume designer Malgosia Turzanska. Hey, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Super excited.
I'm so excited. I'm not kidding when I say I'm such a fan of your work, the way you approach things. If you just have such an eye, and we're gonna get into it. I mean, your use of color, textiles, fabrics, it's all very it's all there, and I'm just like very excited to talk about it. But so let's start with talking about Hamnet, which is an incredibly beautiful, haunting, emotional film. I mean, when I saw it, I saw it with a bunch of journalists, and we were all kind of like sobbing and holding each other. It was a very bonding experience. So this film was directed by Chloe Zhao, who I'm a big fan of. Can you talk first about that collaboration with Chloe before we get into the actual, costume design process?
Chloe is honestly astonishing. The way she approached this one, there's no other way for me to explain it than that it was just like an organic growth.
Yeah.
How she was so connected to the story and to the feelings of the story, that every now and then there would be like a new branch coming out of her, and she would call me and Fiona Crombie, the production designer. She would leave us these little voicemails in the morning, and she was like, I was just thinking, and there would be like a whole new like sprout coming out of her heart, of her brain. And it was amazing because it was like she was always right. She was always like just like digging deeper and getting more out of the story. And it continued throughout the prep, throughout the
Yeah.
shoot. There were just new thoughts and like deeper depth, deeper like connection to the story. So it was just a beautiful process. And she's incredibly curious and very she hears what is happening around her. She like listens to the actors, to like she feels just like a very organically like placed person within the whole process, and it was just magical. I would jump into working with her any moment.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, Chloe, if you're listening, sure you're a big fan. Yeah, I mean, because you could tell that there's such a harmony between you and all the other departments as well, too, which we're
Yeah.
going to definitely get into. Because for a story as emotional and powerful as this one, everyone really has to be in sync. So you could tell that everything you're saying must have been true.
And honestly, it's something that she did at the very, very beginning, which was interesting, was way before we started actual work. She sent me and Fiona and Łukasz, the cinematographer, our respective emotional responses, our lookbooks.
Yeah.
And so we knew from the very beginning where we all stood, and we stood in the same, like we kind of were in the same place, which was really, really awesome. But just kind of organically knowing where we were and then growing from there, it was magical. It really was magical. That they're both incredible, incredible artists, Fiona and Łukasz. And Nicole Stafford, the hair and makeup designer as well.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, props to all of them. So, this is a story that takes place during the Elizabethan period. So, can you walk me through your research process? And did you feel compelled to stay within the strict historical guidelines, or was there room for your own creative interpretation?
So I started with, with the emotional response. So I knew kind of where I was headed, feelings wise.
Right.
And then I jumped into research. When I was starting, actually, I was still shooting the movie that is out now as well, Train Dreams. So we were in Spokane. So not many places where I could like get my hands on real Elizabethan
Yeah.
clothing. But I was reading what I could. I was listening to Ruth Goodman's How to Be a Tutor as I was,
Mm.
driving to Spokane, um, which is a lovely like entry point,
Yeah.
to this world. But definitely, I'm a book nerd, so everything I could find, I was trying to get my hands on, just so I was literate in the period, and both visually and so I knew that I could talk to my team properly. And once I had that down more or less, I started designing, and from the very beginning we knew with Chloe, with Fiona, that it was not going to be like a museum piece by any means. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of poetic license there. I definitely tried to stay respectful to the period, and use it in the moments where it was appropriate. But there's like starting with Fiona's Globe Theater, for example, it is not a copy of the Globe Theater.
Right.
It is our interpretation of it. And I feel like that's a good representation of like how I treated the costumes as well, that they were our adaptation of the period. And sometimes it's close, the characters are closer to the period, sometimes they're a little bit more distant, but they're always anchored in the feelings first, and then kind of I try to use the tools of the period to emphasize the emotional journey, which I think, and we'll get into it, but there's a lot of like pieces that I found out during the research process. And so, for example, Will Paul Mescal's character is wearing a penner on his
Mm.
belt, which I didn't know that was a thing, and I'm like
Yeah.
fascinated by it. So it's like this little double tube that is slung across the belt, which one side has the quill, one side has the ink, a little portable ink. And so he had his tools with him always, which was
Yeah.
so beautiful. And he actually opted for not wearing a dagger, which would have been period appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
but he only wore this penner, which was such a lovely choice, and a good
Yeah.
a good character moment. Yeah.
Yeah, he stays ready, so he doesn't have to
Yeah,
get
exactly.
ready, and I love that. Well, I really appreciate that though too, because it's like, you don't have to so be in line with the research, because it very much like being in that world, you just knew where it was and you could feel the breath of the
Yeah.
Elizabethan period. But then our two leads, which now we're about to really get into, they almost felt almost like mythological too, so they didn't have to be so stuck in the period, world that we're so used to seeing. So, Okay, I've been dying to talk to you about your use of color in this film, Malgosia. I mean, ever since I was in the theater, I was like, I wish I had your phone number. Like, I was just like ready to go right there. So let's get into it. So Jessie Buckley's character Agnes is so deeply connected to the color red that she wears throughout the forest and even beyond further into her life. While Will, played by Paul Mescal, is very grounded in color, faded tones, a little more blues and grays. So how did he use color to reflect who they are and what the worlds are that they inhabit?
So for Jesse's character for Agnes, it's she both in the book and on the pages of the script, she was the first thing that I like kept seeing was this like almost a rotating, beating heart, like very alive, like visceral muscle of the heart. Um, and so it was those, the colors from that. We talked about blood a lot with Chloe and with Jesse, and like different stages of blood and like womanhood and what certain like bloody colors
Yeah.
mean to us or to her. But when we see her first, she is very vibrant. She has these like different shades of red. The bodice she's wearing is we dyed or we painted actually this bark cloth, this like Ugandan non-woven textile that is like literally a tree. So when we see her first, when she's kind of nuzzled into the roots of the tree. She is
Hmm.
wearing a tree, which I
Wow.
was very proud of myself.
Yeah, yeah, you're like, there we go, right there.
But it was this one was painted this like beautiful vibrant red, and some of her layers were a little bit more orangey, some were slightly darker red, but she throughout the story, those first few chapters of her life, it almost seems like she's wearing one dress, but she is actually switching out
Yeah,
in a very Tudor way. The clothing was so very modular, and we're using that on her. She's switching sleeves, switching, skirts and smocks and so on. But they're all kind of like a rotating sea of those vibrant reds and oranges. Um, and we used a lot of linens on her. We used some leather, but she was very plant-based mostly. And then gradually, as we go a little bit deeper and deeper into the story, she's first turning into a little bit more of a rusty red,
yeah,
then darkens slightly. And then after Hamnet dies, spoiler alert, uh, she turns into this like prune grayish scab color.
yeah,
Um, just like no living blood left, just like a
yeah,
dried up piece of flesh, essentially, not to be too gross. Um, and then when we finally see her in London, when we see her last, she is re-wearing a dress that she wore when she was pregnant with the twins that was creating this like giant red egg. This is the same dress, but worn closed up. And so we sort of see the blood circulate again through her veins, through her dress.
yeah,
So that was the progression of color. And another side of it is since she is so connected to nature and such a product of the forest, it was she's a little bit of a berry that could be like a poisonous berry, could be you could heal someone with it if you know what to do with it, but it
totally.
like, definitely can poison you. And so when Will sees her for the first time, it's just this like ball of red, that he
Yeah.
just cannot turn away from.
Oh my gosh, I love that. How many times have you looked at a bush and seen like a ominous red berry and like it looks good,
It's
but
delicious.
yeah, that's so crazy. But then to the opposite of her then is Will's character, who, as we kind of talked about, is very faded, lots of more grays and blues, and it kind of feels like very similar to his family as well too when you get to meet his family in the beginning.
Exactly. So there's kind of two or three things happening there. His family is very monochromatic, very stern. Um, and it's, both their clothing and their house, and you can kind of see that it's all very, very measured and very controlled. Um, and he's breaking out of this a little bit. He's less black and white than they are. But I'll mention one thing about it's less about color and more about textures here. Um, the father of the family, John, is a very abusive person, and
Hmm.
so he, you just never know where his rage is gonna come from, like where the
Yeah.
blow is gonna come from. And so I was thinking about the mother's character, actually, Emily's character, how without being confrontational, how do you protect yourself and your family, your children
Mm.
from someone like that? And so their the sort of black and whiteness of the like very the monochromatism, is that a word? The monochromatic nature
Yeah.
of their clothing is a little bit, so they hide, so they blend in to the walls a little bit, so they're less shouty, less noticeable, so they don't provoke him, but also they're quite padded and quilted. And I was looking at like vintage sports padding, and obviously
Wow.
within the Elizabethan vernacular, the
Yeah.
shapes already are
A
giving off.
very subtle armor.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But so there is just a little bit of padding on everyone. So just to like have a protection, like a layer of protection in case if, a blow is coming your way. So there's a little bit of that in him. And then I was also looking at the ink that Shakespeare wrote with, which is I hope I'm not going to butcher that, iron oak gall ink, which is made of these blemishes basically on oak trees that are filled with this liquid. Apparently, they're caused by a wasp, that a
Mm.
wasp is living in there. I'm not quite sure if I remember this
I
correctly.
know nothing, so I'm
Okay, so
learning from you.
you mix this liquid from a tree, which is again, it's a nice thing that it's a tree connection between both Will
Yeah.
and Agnes. You mix it with rusty nails, and this concoction creates ink. It's
Wow.
sort of like dark gray, black
I'm
ink.
gonna
And
have
so
to Google that after
it's
this.
amazing. It's just
Yeah.
amazing. And so we got some. You can like still buy it in, old British print shops.
Yeah.
And obviously Shakespeare made his own, but we got a little pre-made little delicious little bottles. And so I was looking at, different like watering it down and looking at the grays that created. And he always has his fingers stained with it. There's stains on his clothing here and
Hmm.
there from him like wiping his hands off with the ink that he's writing in. So the grays kind of came out of that, but they were broken down also with the greens and blues of for me it was the river. We see him a few times kind of processing his emotions while either swimming or just standing above water and kind of having this heart to heart with the river
Yeah.
in either like very happy moments of his life or extremely dark moments of his life. So those were the colors that I wanted to bring in there and kind of mix in with the ink. So that's where it came from.
Wow, it's incredible, and I just love how in depth the storytelling really was through the costumes, even like in the padding of his costumes, which maybe we if we could have done them film without it, but just like that very attention to detail just really immerses you in this world. Something that really stood out to me, and I actually remember feeling this way when I saw The Green Knight years ago, is your use of texture, fabrics, and textiles. And for many designers, that's an essential tool, but for you, I really feel like that is really one of your true languages of storytelling through the costumes. The costumes in Hamnet, which we were just talking about, feel very natural, organic. Agnes, in particular, really feels like she's emerging from the earth, especially in the beginning of the film. So, can you just talk about the importance of texture and material to you in your costume design process?
So thank you for bringing Green Knight up because I should say that the reason I discovered bark cloth was because of Green Knight,
Yeah.
because we decided to go vegan on that movie, and
Hmm.
so all of the textiles were, there was no leather, there was no
Yeah.
fur. And so I was looking for leather replacements, and one of the materials that we discovered was bark cloth, which I love. It's just such an incredible thing.
Yeah.
Um, But I guess what I love about texture is that I love camera and I love working with DPs. Um, and I shout out to my first and second husband who are both DPs.
There you go. It helps.
But I feel like the textures give the camera something to anchor on, and you can kind of see the camera sinking its teeth into textured garments. So
Hmm.
I really love it. And if there is a but I don't like using it just in a decorative sense. I do want to make sure that it's organic to the character, that it just makes sense and it's stemming out of some emotional aspect of the character. Um, and so with Will, it's I think it's the most pronounced here because he starts in this quilted doublet, which is kind of reminiscent of it's uneven lines. They're quite organic. So again, going back to the water and like dripping ink and so on. Um, but he is also wearing a layer that is made of, we called it the mushroom leather, but it's not mushroom leather, it's actual regular leather.
Yeah.
No vegan, sadly, no, we didn't go vegan here. But it was leather that was laser scratched. And so
Mm.
it created this texture, kind of like an underside of a mushroom, which I
Hmm.
really, really loved. But it made sense to me because his father, again, just going back to the abusive persona in their household, his father is wearing a necklace with a toothpick on it, which was another one of those like cool little research tidbits that came up. Apparently, people often wore toothpicks as kind of as jewelry, but it was like just hanging on your neck, and you could after dinner just you know
That's
which is,
wild.
isn't that amazing?
I feel like that would bother me, but yes, that's wild.
But so we made one for John, and it's a very violent shape. It's kind of like a claw. And so I was imagining that he all throughout Will's life, he was taking this claw and like taking little jabs at him. We see it, like we see how he's treating him.
Yeah.
Uh, And so it came from that it was like these little paper cuts, that he was receiving I mean, throughout his life with this father.
Yeah.
But then later, when we see him kind of have that breakdown at night when he's trying to write and shouts at Agnes, wakes the baby up, we see a switch happen. And so from then on, it's no longer the little slashes coming from the father, it's coming from himself.
Yeah.
And so the leather, he starts wearing this like shell of a doublet that has the Elizabethan pinking throughout the garment. But to me, it was the slashes were coming from him. It was the little like growing wounds that like were initiated by the father with these little scratches, but suddenly now he's growing them into these actual wounds
Wow.
that then gradually as he loses Hamnet, when we see him in London, he's wearing a doublet which has just gashes, they're like no longer slashes. It's just like these giant gashes that you see him moving and they're like pulling and pushing and you know you see the like there's like a discomfort and like a pain in the garment. At least I hope it comes through that
Yeah.
way. But of course, it is an Elizabethan shape and an Elizabethan tool. And then gradually, as we go further, we end up with him playing the ghost of the father in Hamlet. And so here he's wearing a linen cape essentially, or a sheet that is covered in clay, and the clay is cracked, and it's you can see it falling off a little bit, but it's those same the same idea of the
Yeah.
slashes and gashes and pinking. But here he's just cracking all over until he finally washes it off, and then we see him release his pain and actually cry for
Wow.
the first time. So that's kind of how it progressed.
Yeah, you're gonna make me emotional again just thinking about this movie. But so I mean, the idea of like pain and depression is very kind of palpable throughout this film. Amongst many other things, there are some very joyful moments, very beautiful moments as well. So to that point, I was really fascinated by the aging and dying of the costumes as well too. Looking at Will and Agnes's family, this is a family that's lived through some hard times, the Elizabethan period. It's not exactly contemporary modern times, and you can really feel the history in their clothing. So, how did you approach that aspect of design with your costume department as well?
I love aging and dying. This is if this is no, the costume design is no longer a viable viable career path for me, I will be a dyer and ager because I
I see
I
that actually.
I I this was the first time that I didn't do as much as normally because somehow I always end up doing it myself.
hmm
Um, but I had a phenomenal team and it was just it was so fun working with them. We started with actually with testing period plant dyes, natural dyes. And so we we didn't use them on a lot of the characters because it was just too difficult to get so much yardage consistent in using natural dyes. And I'm hoping that the next movie I do, I can give it a proper go. They're just fascinating. And especially, given the connection of Agnes to nature and to
Yeah.
plants, it was really fun to play with. And the ink, obviously, on the other side. And so, for example, the stepmother's character, she's wearing she's in a little bit of pink, but also in these like acid yellow and green,
Mm.
just very like bile-like colors. And this was natural dyes. This was weld,
Wow.
which is crazy. I was so happy with that. I did not like, like I did obviously with like indigos and cochineal and stuff like that. I've gotten some pretty intense colors before, but this acid yellow was a shock to me. And so I'm
Yeah.
glad I'm glad it's in. I was waiting for someone to be like, no, this is too much. And I'm very happy that it's in the movie. Um,
Yes.
but with with all of the characters, I wanted to make sure that they feel like they've grown out of this world. So it was, the aging aspect is extremely important to me, that it doesn't feel out of place. And, having such an amazing production designer like Fiona, I wanted to make sure that it like the costumes kind of live within the spaces that she's creating and are not like standing out in an inappropriate way.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears for a moment and talk about the children. There's a lovely moment when the three of them put on a low play inspired by their father, Will. It's such a fun, bright scene. Probably, I mean, that's one of my favorite scenes from the entire film. You just feel you really get to take a break and just watch everyone just be happy for a moment. It's very bright. It also beautifully their costumes beautifully mirror their parents in ways in color, silhouette, and spirit. So, what was it like designing for the children and creating that connection between generations?
So I'll start with that moment, the
Yeah.
witches moment, the play moment. That was one of those voicemails uh, that we got in the morning, basically. It was um it was a very last minute thing, and it
Mm.
was a surprise for Jessie. Jessie did not know this is happening.
Oh, I love
And
that.
when Will uncovers her eyes, that was all real. She had
Oh,
no idea what was happening. And so it was such a meta joyful moment for all of us, because it
yeah.
was happening within the scene, but also for real.
That's awesome.
And as the kids would have done, they would have run around their house and like found things to put on their bodies and their heads.
hmm
I was doing that because this was literally last minute. You know, I was running around our department and our costume department trying to see what was available, what could we do. And I actually have photos of me wearing all those things first because I was like testing them, trying them on and seeing if we could figure it out.
I love
And
that. I'm going to need your team to send those to me after.
absolutely, yeah. It was so much fun. And again, like my team was so incredible. And in moments like that, that you get to do something last minute, knowing that you have their full support and everyone is on board and everyone is just like making it happen,
Hmm.
it was incredible. And again, it provides this release, the fun, the laughter. It is so needed in a movie like this.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that it happened.
Yeah.
Um, and then the regular costumes were again the very modular tie-on sleeves. You could either use little pins to pin the pieces together, like partlets and sleeves. We opted for just ties to keep the actors safe.
Yeah.
But they're slightly reminiscent of the parents colors. But also I wanted to make sure that they were within that very black and white house, that they are little pieces of color that kind of, when they run through, that there's like, you know, a little a little flutter of color happening, that they bring joy to this incredibly monochromatic place, and they
Yeah.
make it alive. Um, and I have to say, the moment when they're switching clothes, I love it so
Oh,
much. It
so
just
good.
they're
Yeah.
just they were incredible little actors, and it was just a lot of fun. And then yeah, it just like the little, like there's a little bit of polka dot there. There's a little bit like slightly childish little elements. But on Susanna specifically, there's polka dots, but she's like a
Hmm.
grumpy teenager.
Yeah.
Still is wearing this little cute little capelet. So it was just joy and this like more serious piece to have, those little bonnets and
Yeah.
I'm coifs and yeah. So
Yeah,
that
that moment when they changed the switch clothes, I mean, it is just such a joyful moment. I mean, everyone was like just really connected in that moment. And also just shout out to these young actors, by the way, who were stunning, incredible.
Yeah. And with Hamnet and Judith, they're wearing their little jerkins are made of the same fabric, and it was a vintage fabric that we found that is striped, and Judith's was horizontal and Hamnet's was vertical, and we had so little of it that I was like, please don't grow anymore because
Yeah. Please stop right here.
but then their nightgowns, when we see them in their final scenes together, the linen has a like a window pane, basically a window pane pattern. So we have those, the verticals and the horizontals combined for this last like
Yeah.
actually identical piece. And I also love the fact that they are not the same, they are not identical twins, but
Yeah.
they think they are, they feel they are the same, and that's the most incredible thing, to like that they actually assume that everyone believes it, is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, loved it.
Yeah, it's a very touching moment and just such great storytelling by everyone involved. So I'm still a little stuck on color here, and we did talk about this a little bit, but another fascinating challenge that you and your department faced was how the costumes interacted with their environments. And one of my favorite scenes in the entire film is actually the moment when Agnes is giving birth in the woods, and you really see this very interesting dress. The fabric's like clinging to her in the woods, just surrounded by roots and trees. I thought it was so beautiful. But then, another scene I'm thinking about is when you see Will in London. It just feels so drained of color, and his costume, he kind of just blends into this world that just feels very cold and dark. So with that comes a collaboration with other departments, which we've kind of talked about: cinematography, production design. So can you just talk about collaborating with these other departments and how you were able to kind of be in sync when it came to like that moment in the woods?
Yeah, so it was when I first presented my sketches to the whole team. Łukasz he was just like, I imagined this red. This is the red that I saw, but I didn't know I saw it, but I saw it. So he was so on board with the whole, with her whole palette. Excuse me. Um, and basically what was happening is that we were working so closely together. Fiona and I were, it's first of all, it helps being in the same space. So we were in Elstree Studios. Our costume department was, like a 2 minutes walk from the art department. By the way, Elstree Studios, where The Shining was shot. Uh,
Oh, perfect.
in some of the hallways, it's like you're walking through the production office, and that's the hallway.
That's a really fun cinematic meta
The
moment.
maze is currently there's a giant supermarket standing there, but
That's kind of
you
a
can
bummer.
kind of feel you can kind of feel the history, which
Yeah.
was amazing. But yeah, being close, physically close, and being able to pop in and out and like see what new things do I have on the walls, what new things you have on the walls, like sharing swatches constantly, and especially, um, working on a period movie, we were sourcing period fabrics, not Elizabethan, but but fabrics with some sense of history. And so often we would end up being in the same flea markets or textile markets, and we kind of work together of like who's doing what, just to make sure that we're not doubling up, just to make sure that like who's ever standing in front of a curtain is not blending in unless this is what is needed. So it was just a constant conversation. And outside of the like regular, sharing of swatches and images and so on, we also did like a human check-in.
Yeah.
So every Friday we would just like sit usually on the floor of my office with Fiona, just like be like, how are you? What is, and it was just so beautiful. And so, being able to take this moment in a movie that is so emotionally difficult was crucial. It just like made it feel very like human and organic, and like we were growing this thing together. And like looking at props constantly, looking at it was all of, the set dressing. Um, we were in constant communication, which it really Alice Felton, the set decorator, she after we saw the movie in London together, she was like, it really like you can see it. Like I know we talked about it, but you see that we talked about it.
Yeah.
It was just a very easy and organic collaboration.
Yeah, it all feels very cohesive, and I think that really comes to a head when we get to the end of the film. So, going into our final question here, we get to see the play Hamlet, take life, which I'm sure many of our listeners have read or seen in some form. This must have been a massive undertaking, not just for you, but also I want to talk about your crew as well. So how did you all come together to really bring this very massive scene together? We did talk about the ghost also, but I'm like thinking about the people in the crowd and Agnes standing out in a crowd. It's just and set and everything. It's a huge scene. I was really taken aback by it.
So this was one of the reasons why it worked, very honestly, is the way it was scheduled. So we were shooting the Globe at the very, very end. And so throughout the whole production, we were fitting background. And so, we made all of our principal clothing. And we made for the background, we made some coifs and some partlets, some bags, belts, just like things to kind of connect them together to
Yeah.
make sure that they worked within our world.
Yeah.
We rented the base of their costumes. We rented from all over the place. So it was important to just kind of like put them into this one world together. And yeah, we were fitting throughout. And again, I had a fantastic team that understood what we were doing. And during prep, as I was researching, every time I would find an interesting, I actually had a folder on my computer that was called Interesting People. And so whenever there was, in a painting or in a portrait, there was like something that was like, this looks good. This could look good in a crowd. So I had a ready arsenal of shapes and faces and colors. And so my team had that from the beginning, and they fully understood where we were and what we were doing. And I have to give a shout out to those the background performers because they act alongside Jessie. They truly are there with her. They like laugh and cry, and it was an incredible experience. But as for the actual Globe players, it was the funnest part of it because it was at the very end again, and we all felt as if it was our like end of school year play,
Yeah,
Like
yeah. I mean,
suddenly we're
you're
switching.
designed to play within the film.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And so it was like for graduation.
Yeah, your
And so
capstone course. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And and so, like within historically the costumes of the Globe players were very close to what the audience wore, so the audience could kind of see themselves reflected on stage and connect to them. And since we don't wear these clothes as the cinema audience, I wanted to make sure that there was a layer of either something modern or some different kind of artifice that would be easier for us as a modern audience to connect to it, or just understand it. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up creating all of those. All of the players were built out of linen and flax. There's Gertrude and Ophelia, who is not in the movie, but I actually liked her costume a lot. But they had wigs that were made of flax, which I've never actually worked with flax as a raw material before, and it was so cool. Also, it stank to high heavens, so
Mm.
we had to have like it stunk like a barn, so we had to have like essential oils and all to just help
Yeah.
help the performance the performers go through it. But it was just raw linen, very true to the Elizabethan shape. So, Gertrude is in a giant farthingale. There's a lot of padding. There's a lot of the shapes are exaggerated. And then I painted them with just like a regular latex paint. And it was very honestly the scariest moment of my life because I had my incredible teams, build these beautiful shapes. And I
Yeah.
was like, if this doesn't work, what are we going to do if I
We're done. Yeah.
so I ended up painting both Ophelia and Gertrude, which were the biggest costumes at the same time, because I was like, there has to be no turning back. If I'm
Hmm.
doing it, it has to happen. There's
Right.
no little steps. So there's also a time-lapse video of me painting both of them, I was so nervous, but it ended up looking really cool. And so they're very like unfinished, when you see the players there, the paint kind of fades. You can see the brush strokes. It's very gestural.
Hmm.
And it's the same with Hamlet. I was imagining that Will wanted, he would remember what Hamnet looked like and kind of in a simplified version using the paint both on his costume and on his hair actually try to recreate the image of his son that way. Um, and yeah, I hope it works, but it also, it connects with the painted backdrop of the backdrop
Yeah.
on the stage. So we talked about using paint and like how, what it meant. And we see once Hamnet is dying, he goes behind the scrim of the
Hmm.
backdrop, there's an importance to it.
Yeah.
Um, so it kind of connected everything like that.
So many beautiful moments in those final scenes. It's just such a joy to watch, and I just really love this film, Malgosia. So huge congratulations to you and everyone who worked on it. To close, what has this film meant to you, both personally and professionally as a costume designer?
I honestly, this is like I can start crying at a drop of a hat thinking about it because it was an unbelievable experience. And it is a movie about grief, but it is also about the healing power of art, which is
Hmm.
something that we all need
Yeah.
constantly, right? And especially now it seems. Um, and also on a personal level, my dad passed away when we were shooting. My own grief informed my work on the film, but also going through the collective grief of the movie informed my own way of processing. It like helped me process what I was going through personally. So it was just like a very organic, beautiful symbiosis between personal life and professional life there. And again, working with Chloe was unbelievable. And the way I'm gonna, I don't want to like go on and on forever, but we were shooting very difficult moments with the kids, with Jesse. It's heavy.
Yeah.
And then at the end of each week, she would do these dance takes at the the day where the camera would keep rolling and suddenly Hamnet gets up from the dead and there's like, staying alive or something else playing, and the whole crew comes in front of the camera and everyone is dancing, and you kind of get to shake off the like heaviness of the day and kind of enjoy yourself as a group of creatives and just have fun.
Yeah.
And that was such a beautiful way of processing it and then shaking it off. And, just a very, very special thing. So I'm super grateful for this experience. And what I am loving is that the people so far who have seen the movie seem to approach it without cynicism,
Hmm.
which is very special. And I love the fact that people are like letting the movie happen to them and kind of allow it to hurt them and
Yeah.
then process it and hopefully go out on the other side healed.
I totally agree with that. I mean, going into this movie, it was very, you're put in such like a vulnerable state, and you just really get to sit in the moment and think. And like you said, the healing nature of art really just brings you out of it. And this is a film that I'm gonna be thinking about, for the next few years. It's easily one of my favorite films of the year, and I'm just so happy for you. I really love these costumes and everything that you and your team put together. So, costume designer Malgosia Turzanska, thank you so much for being here. I am such a fan. I'm so excited I finally got to talk to you. So, thank you so much for being here. We all have been dying to talk to you.
Thank you. And I, as a fan of the podcast, thank you so much for having me. This is a thrill.
Oh gosh, you'll have to come back soon. Anytime you do anything else, please promise
Well,
you'll come back.
Train Dreams comes out today.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, go see that. And also, as soon as you all can see Hamnet in a theater, please do so, because such a beautiful experience. Thank you, Malgosia.
Thank you.